48 miles an hour.
In this video, I'm reviewing the Tuttio ICT Fat Tire Off-Road e-bike, which is Tuttio's moped-style e-bike that's at home both on the pavement and the dirt. I'm going to go over the unboxing and assembly process and go in depth on the build and features and do an acceleration test, a braking test, a hill climb test, and review on how it rides both on the road and dirt. So let's get to it. So the ICT comes in a pretty standard bicycle shipping box, but it is heavy, so make sure to be careful when moving, and I do recommend having someone help you move it. After opening, the bike's assembled about 80%. All you have to do is remove all the packing foam and zip ties, install the handlebars, front wheel, front fenders, headlight, pedals, and adjust the levers and display to your liking, including the box of necessary tools and instruction manual. The whole process took me about 30 minutes or so, with most of my time being spent on installing the fenders and putting on the front wheel. The bike isn't that hard to put together, so take your time and have fun. When I went through the bike, all the bolts were tight, and it powered up no problem. So just at a glance, you can see the ICT leans heavily on looking like a dirt bike, with a Moto-Style fender and sweeping frame that is made of aluminum alloy. At the heart of the ICT is a brushless 2,000 watt rear hub motor that has a peak output of 4,000 watts and provides 170 Newton meters of torque up to a claim range of 50 miles per hour in the right conditions, which I will be testing later on in the video. And since the ICT puts out so much power, you need a big battery to power it. And the bike does this with a removable 60 volt, 25 amp hour removable lithium ion battery that uses LG cells and gets between 30 to 36 miles when using the throttle and 75 to 100 miles when pedaling. The ICT also has some serious stopping power, with 4 piston hydraulic disc brakes with massive 220mm rotors. And to help with comfort, the ICT comes with full suspension, with an inverted front fork and an adjustable rear shock with a progressive coil. The drivetrain is a Shimano 7-speed, with a 28-tooth cassette and a 44-tooth chainring. The ICT comes with 20-inch spoke wheels, with a moped tire with a 4-inch width, and a tread pattern optimized for both on and off-road riding. It comes with a Moto-Style seat that's 16 inches long and 8 inches wide. And for additional safety, there's a horn, a front headlight, and a rear brake light. The ICT also comes with a very pretty LCD display that shows your speed, battery level, assist level, voltage output, and odometer. The bike weighs about 130 pounds. It has a 330-pound load capacity, it's about 70.5 inches long, has a wheelbase of about 50 inches, a seat height of about 31.5 inches, a handlebar width of 29 inches, and is designed for people 5'2" to 6'6" tall. And at the time of this recording, you can pick up the ICT for $1,615. And depending on what accessories you get, the price tag goes all the way up to $1,900. But one thing I really like and appreciate about the ICT is not only the number of accessories you can get, but also that basically every single part of this bike can be purchased if something breaks. You can even buy the whole frame or just a rear triangle, which is a first for any bike that I've reviewed on this channel. And as a consumer, I really appreciate it.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to check out the speedometer accuracy on the ICT, comparing the speedometer against an iPhone app. We're in speed level 1. It's about 18 miles per hour and 17 on the app. All right, here we go. Speed level 2. Speed level 2 seems to tap out around 24. So 24 on the bike, 23 on the app. All right, level 3 goes to about 29.7 or 30-ish, and 28 on the app, so it's a tiny bit off. All right, speed level 4, which goes to 36, it says 34 on the app. All right, here we go. Going to check out the top speed of the ICT. It's on number 5. We're going to open this thing up. We're also going to use it as a speedometer accuracy test as well, as we get at higher speeds. Here we go. All right, we're at 30 miles an hour. Easy. 47 according to the bike. We're going to slow down on this corner, maintaining 35-ish. Alright, here we go. Let's open her up. 42, 45, 47. We're starting to flatten out a little bit. 48 miles an hour. Woo! Alright, 48. So when it said 48 on the bike, it was 46 on the speedometer app. Here we go. Going to test out the acceleration of the ICT. Probably up to about 35 or so. I don't want to go too fast just because I'm in a neighborhood. I don't want to piss anybody off. All right, ready? And go. 10, 20, 30, 35, 40. Dang.
So for the final results, the ICT went 0 to 10 miles per hour in 1.8 seconds, 0 to 20 in 3.5 seconds, 0 to 30 in 6.9 seconds, and to 40 miles per hour in 15.8 seconds. So the bike has a very smooth and linear power output. It gets up to 20 really quickly, but then slowly loses some steam. But the power band is very user-friendly while still being fun and torquey. But this got me thinking, how would the ICT compare to my Honda Grom? So there's only one way to find out.
Alright, here we go. Going to test out the 0 to 40 on a 2015 Honda Grom. Ready? And go. 10, 20, 30, 40. Alright, now we're going to test out the acceleration against a Honda Grom. Up to 40 miles per hour. I just did the top speed run, so the motor's probably a little bit hot, but whatever, it is what it is. Ready? And go. Whoa! 10, 20, 30, 40.
So for the final results, the Grom went 0 to 10 miles per hour in 1.1 seconds, 0 to 20 in 2.5 seconds, to 30 in 4.7 seconds, and to 40 miles per hour in 9 seconds flat. The ICT went 0 to 10 in 1.9 seconds, 0 to 20 in 3.5 seconds, 0 to 30 in 8.3, and to 40 miles per hour in 18.2 seconds. Something to keep in mind is that this test was mainly just for fun, and I did do a top speed run on the ICT beforehand, which I do think affected the power output since the bike lowers the amount of power when the motor gets hot. But even if I would have done it with the motor cool, the Grom is faster. Overall, I had a really good time doing this test, and I'm still really impressed with the ICT's acceleration.
Okay, here we go. We're doing the hill climbing test using only the throttle. This is a 15% gradient. We're doing 27, 26, honestly, easy, no problem at all. 25. All right, so the bike just smashed that climb. Let's do something a little bit steeper. All right, here we go. Doing a 22% gradient. Let's see how the ICT does. 33, 32, 30 miles per hour. Smashing the hill pretty easily. 23, 22, 21, and easy peasy.
Next, I want to test out the braking distance from 3 different speeds. First was from 15 miles per hour, which the bike stopped in 8 feet. The second speed was 25 miles per hour, which the ICT stopped in 18 feet. And last was from 35 miles per hour, which the bike stopped in 47 feet. So the brakes on the ICT are fantastic. They're 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes with massive 220mm rotors that provide great stopping power with zero brake fade. So the last test is the rider view, which in my opinion is the most important test for an electric bike. So I rode the ICT around a lot in my testing, through many neighborhoods and varying types of terrain, and the bike was in its element regardless of whether it was on the pavement or the dirt. The first thing I'm going to discuss is how the bike rides on the pavement. The motor is smooth, but very torquey. When using the throttle, you do have to be a little careful due to the torque, but once you get used to it, the bike is actually pretty easy to ride. But even though the bike is very torquey, if the rider opens the throttle up wide open from a stop, it won't wheelie as long as you're leaning forward. But if you're leaning back, the front wheel does lift up pretty easily. The ride of the ICT on the pavement is extremely smooth and comfortable. The front fork is able to mute out small bumps and cracks in the pavement, and the rear shock works really great, and it's actually very well dampened. But whatever the suspension misses, you have a very well padded Moto-Style seat and 20-inch fat tires to mute out any other vibrations and subtleties in the road. The ICT is also very stable high speeds, and it feels like a motorcycle, which I associate to the front end being more raked out. Sometimes these types of e-bikes, the seating position be hit or miss, but I found the ICT seating comfortable and a pleasant surprise. You do sit closer to the back of the bike, which helps keep your arms in a comfortable position, almost like riding on a cruiser motorcycle. And since you're in a relaxed neutral position, there's no pressure on your wrist, which helps with comfort and reducing arm fatigue. Also, the touch points are really nice. The grips are rubber and feel really good in the hands. They provide ample grip and just have a nice ergonomic feel. The seat's also really grippy and well padded. This has to be the most comfortable seat I've ever sat on compared to every other moped-style e-bike tested on this channel. So while the ICT proved to be right at home in the pavement, the truth of the matter is that this bike has a twist throttle, knobby moped tires, and pretty good suspension, so in my book, it's basically a pedal version of a dual sport motorcycle. Due to this, I decided to take it on an off-road ride with my buddies that I would typically take my Suzuki DRZ on. For this ride, we went to the Orozco Ridge Truck Trail, here in the mountains of San Diego. So this trail definitely isn't a super challenging trail, but there is a lot of climbing, the roads are slippery, and there's enough bumps and obstacles in the road to put the ICT through its paces and see if it's a legitimate replacement to a dual sport motorcycle. So the trail starts off really tame, as my buddies and I rode through some basic paved roads that went through the beautiful Cleveland National Forest. After about a mile or two, we started climbing into the clouds of this brisk morning, not really sure what lied ahead. My initial worry on this ride is that I would be underpowered and hold my buddies back, but after started climbing, I wasn't worried at all. So the ICT had more than enough power to climb every hill on this ride, with some of these climbs being up to a 22% grade. While climbing, the motor's super smooth. It's torquey, and just an absolute delight. There was so much power, in fact, that I never had to use more than 50% of the throttle. And like I mentioned before, this trail isn't very smooth, and there are some nasty bumps and water bars which allow me to get a feel of the suspension. So on the small bumps, the suspension works really well, but on bigger obstacles, the front fork is the weak point of the ICT. It gets overwhelmed and clunky on bigger hits, but in contrast, the rear shock was absolutely lovely and worked fantastic. And talking about fantastic, this seat is amazing. We rode for over 2 hours, and at no point did I have any discomfort. The ergonomics were comfortable, the seat was grippy, and most importantly, it was plush and just a delight. But by far, the standout of the whole ride, other than the power, was the grip of the tires. I never had any moment in this whole ride where the tires slipped. They were grippy, rolled fast, and confidence inspiring through slippery turns and even through sand. The truth is, no matter how good a bike is designed, the tires can be a make or break on how good the bike actually rides. And with these tires, the ICT is able to use its power efficiently and confidently. So in total, I rode 19.71 miles and climbed over 2,600 feet through the backcountry bliss. The bike performed so much better than I expected, and it felt right at home. Most importantly, I never held back my buddies, and they agreed that this bike was up to the challenge. So in my opinion, the ICT is a legitimate replacement to a dual sport motorcycle if you don't have a motorcycle license. And in case you're wondering, I finished the ride just as the bike went down to its last battery bar. So in theory, based on this ride, the bike could have gone about 26 miles and over 3,000 feet of climbing, all while using only the throttle, which I think is pretty darn impressive. So far through my extensive testing, the ICT has held up extremely well to daily use. The motor's almost silent, it's extremely smooth, and has a ton of torque. Depending on your weight, the bike can go about 50 miles an hour or so, but one thing I did notice is if you're going wide open for a while, the bike starts to cut power, which I believe is to keep the motor from overheating. But even with the power cut, I was still able to go between 37 and 40 miles per hour pretty easily. But all that power and speed is irrelevant if you can't actually stop the bike, and the brakes on this bike are definitely up to the task. They're 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes with massive 220mm rotors. They have a lot of braking power, the rotor dissipates heat really well, and I experienced zero brake fade during my testing. This is a moped-style e-bike, so its bread and butter is riding around with the throttle, but if you needed to, you can pedal. And when you do, there's a ridiculous amount of power. The suspension works very well, especially the rear shock. It's nice and plush, it can handle some pretty bumpy roads. I think that one main contributor to how good the shock feels is that it has a progressive spring, which has a nice soft feel when you sit on the bike and then stiffens as the spring compresses. Compared to the rear shock, I felt that the front fork wasn't quite as good. If you only intend to ride the ICT on the street or smooth dirt roads, it works great. But when off-road and hitting bigger obstacles at higher speeds, it does get overworked. It's not a horrible fork, it's just that compared to the rear shock, it's not quite as good. The last thing I want to discuss is where this bike fits in the world of not only bikes, but two-wheel adventure vehicles. Before testing the ICT, I never ridden an electric moped-style bike that is capable as the ICT. It feels right at home on the street with enough power to keep up with traffic, power up any hill, and enough safety features so you can be seen. The only thing that I think is missing are turn signals. But also has the ability to ride off-road and conquer trails that usually dual sport motorcycles ride. The bike has enough power to keep up with gas-powered motorcycles, it's comfortable, and has grip for days. I truly believe that if you want to ride with friends who have dirt bikes, you can keep up with them on most tame truck trails and roads. In fact, when riding with my buddies on our ride, I felt I was on a motorcycle the whole time, with the only reminder being the pedals. I think that the ICT is a great gateway for someone who wants to ride through the backcountry or is considering a motorcycle but doesn't have a license or know how to use a clutch. In fact, the ICT has now become the bike I let people ride when they want to join on a dual sport ride. So in conclusion, I came away extremely impressed with the Tuttio ICT. It looks pretty awesome, it has good range, a ton of torque, it's smooth, it's a lot of fun to ride, it handles both pavement and dirt with ease, and it has an insane amount of grip. So if you're looking for a moped-style e-bike that gives you an experience of a motorcycle without having to worry about a clutch, high cost of entry, or a motorcycle license, I think that the ICT is a great option and will surprise you on how capable it is. But if you have any questions around an ICT or another Tuttio product and you want to share your experience, please leave them in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching and have a great one.